One. I know it's because you're on meds.
Right.
So you're here, but you're actually locked inside there. Yeah, I know.
In your own bubble.
Yeah, I know how it is. It's like, but you're legally high, so I guess that's cool. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All right. Anybody got any announcements? We have November, what? Rummage sale is next.
It's coming Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Starts at what time in the morning?
It's Thursday and Friday it starts at noon.
Thursday, Friday at noon.
Saturday at 8.
Saturday at 8.
Where's this at Community Hall.
Community Hall.
It's from the Heartland.
From the Heart, where then all that money goes to the kids, which is cool. And non-sectarian, all the nons. It's very, very good. They
And
just
a lot of stuff.
yeah, lots of stuff. I'm sure I will be there. As something equally important, there is on Saturday, November 2nd from 4 to 8 p.m., there's a wine tasting. Well, that is important to some people. The proceeds benefit the High Country Conservancy. And is this at Miriam's place?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Rancho de Sol Vineyards, Bautista Road in Anza.
So, no, they're out in
Rancho de Sol. That's the place next to where they just put all that nasty smelling stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, very good. And then there's a Rare Fruit Growers Association. You hear about that? People that want to grow rare fruit. There's a gentleman speaking about growing rare fruit at the Little Red Schoolhouse, October 22nd.
And he talks about how to grow it here
And he-
specifically.
Topics discussed, how you can access new unique varieties that grow well in our local microclimates.
What time is it?
It's at 6:30 p.m.
The Little Red
The
School.
latest information on pruning and production,
I need to write it.
learn about unique variants of pomegranates, apples, pistachios, and more. So I'll have to go because my wife,
You won't be here.
I won't be here.
That's the truth.
Someone will go for
I'll
me
go for you.
and answer your questions.
Where's
So
that?
it's at the Little Red Schoolhouse, the 22nd at 6:30 p.m.
You're here.
Well,
My mom's birthday.
All the people that are growers here are not going to be here.
Maybe-
Because you left, your family aren't growers. They water, but a waterer and a grower are not the same thing.
I'm a grower.
Yeah, you're a waterer.
You're
No.
a- really, yeah.
You're a waterer. You're not a grower. It's okay, man. It's like I was having fun getting in the dirt yesterday and I just thought, why aren't there more potatoes?
Yeah, they're probably still hidden in the weeds.
Why aren't there more potatoes? Because I wanted to dig up more. There's nothing better than satisfying than digging up a
Create
potato.
the mounds as they grew, because
Well,
all
they
those
did
leaves
well.
should
We
have
got a
turned
few
into
out of them.
potatoes.
Anyway, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And wife and I had a good time last week. Went to jazz, did some jazz Saturday.
Sunday.
Did some jazz Saturday. Came back up on the hill. Sunday, came back up on the hill. And I had scheduled to, and a friend of mine had scheduled to go to another place overnight on Monday night. And Diane wasn't sure if she could get Tuesday off.
But it wasn't hot.
But it wasn't, anyway, so it worked off. She got Tuesday off, so we went and saw Gravity, which was a great flick, really liked it. It is intense. We didn't see it in 3D, but I think in 3D it would be like, whoa, crazy intense. Which I actually, the next thing I'm going to see is, well, I'll see movies before then, but for sure with my son-in-law, future son-in-law to be, we will go see The Hobbit when it comes out at midnight. We will wait in line and go see the midnight showing when The Hobbit comes out. December 7th or something like that.
December 22nd.
Yes, and these are very important issues, okay? So people are saying, this is not religious, this is not spiritual. Who told you that? These are important things. Fruit trees, movies, wine tasting. These are important matters, okay? You got to expand your mind, okay? If you brought your Bibles today, you can turn to the book of Luke. Luke chapter 12. Let me say something here about the way you should feel free when you study Scripture, not to be caught up in literalism. It's not trying to say one thing and only one thing. So you read this and it says, people have convinced you it's only saying one thing and it's only talking about one thing. That's because that's what they want you to think. But more to the point, it's actually talking about a much bigger picture, because whenever you're dealing with personalities and relationships, whenever you're in the moment and passions, it's always more complicated than just one thing. Or I've always said, the thing is never the thing. When you meet someone and they're all upset, you need to uncover that. You need to unpack that. If they're just blaming one person, you need to unpack that, because there's a little bit for them too. Or I mean, like, they're complicit somewhere along the line. There's some duplicity and some complicity, okay? And so, but it's our nature, and that's the problem why you can't even trust the way you remember your own history, okay? Because you remember your own history depending upon where you are and how you're feeling. And you cannot separate out feelings. You can't separate out feelings from history, nor don't think the apostles didn't have feelings about subjects. Don't think they didn't think poorly about Judas. Right? I mean, you say, oh, John, he wrote the book of Revelation. He couldn't have had an axe to grind. Are you kidding me? He's a Jewish guy. He had no axe to grind? Come on, give me a break. People, holy books are the only thing where we take them and put them in this hermetically sealed jar, and around it is a interpretation that you are allowed to look through, and understand it only that way, and don't you dare ask a question. Now, the other day I started reading Alfred Whitehead's Process and Reality, which is some pretty deep sledding, but I thought I might be up to it. I'm not sure yet, but I'm quite a ways in. I am catching more stuff than I would have 10 years ago. And so I posted online that I was in the process of reading Alfred. And of course somebody said, oh, be careful. Be careful, that's a scary and dangerous road. And I said, now I know I want to read it. That's the worst thing you can tell me is don't look at it, don't read it, don't ask that question. Oh man, now I want to know. You know what I mean? Don't go over that hill. Don't look around that bush. Whatever you do, don't go on Facebook. And so what we do is, especially with our youth, we have a spirituality that's based on don't, and then they're gonna, trust me, they're doing. John, they're just not telling you. They're just not telling you, but they are doing it. Whatever it is that you don't want them to do, they're doing it. Just like you did. Oh, please don't be like me. So, here we go. An extraordinary large number of people had gathered to hear Jesus. In fact, the crowd was jam-packed so tight that people were treading on each other's feet. Yeah, it's a liberal translation. Deal with it. Avoid the Pharisees like the plague, Jesus shouted. Don't copy their thoughts or behaviors. See, Jesus understands that a certain ideas, certain ways of thinking will trap you. Right. Certain ways of perceiving God and other people will trap you, and you'll just continue to go down and down that road. And if you can get enough people committed to it, but there's no liberty in it, there's no voices in it other than hearing yourself. There's nothing beyond that. He says, because thoughts produce behavior. That's why legalism, you should avoid it, right? Even though someone was saying, well, you got to have rules concern. We just can't let all these people that work hard, and we just can't let them become citizens. You know what I mean? The more rules you make, the more dysfunctional. The more rules you make to have to make a system work. See, even in war, in the fog of war, rules are just so that you don't have to think about the basic things, but you still have to create in the environment, and you have to create big time, because all of a sudden chaos comes in the form of IED or something else, and you better People think people in the military aren't creative. They're very creative. When you're in the moment and it's happening, you got to be creative. It's like having a family. It's like having children, teenagers. You know what I mean? You know, spiritually, that's exactly where God is. God is not in fixed ideas about stuff. You know, we're not going to sit around and talk about how God is omni this and omni that and all this and all that. And it detaches God way out there. He says, avoid them. Don't copy their thoughts or behavior in any way at all. Why do I say this? Look for yourselves. Now, Jesus is comparing. You have to understand the way people talk, and especially the way Jesus talks. He's not being literal. He's always metaphor. He's always making innuendos. He's using hyperbolic language. If you look at him and say, oh, he said that, that's exactly what he means. Well, you don't know that that's exactly what he means. You know, you could read an article I wrote, say that, you know, I would cut off my hand someday for an all-day sucker that I could dip in milk and slowly eat for an hour like I did as a boy. Right? But that doesn't mean I would cut off my hand. If you don't know the language and the time, you might think things that you shouldn't think. We'll get to that. They're impossibly fastidious and overly critical crowd. Hair-splitting their ridiculous rules and regulations to the nth degree. Now, we know who Jesus is talking about here, don't we? He's comparing religion with spirituality. He's talking to disciples. Remember, he's talking to disciples, and he's saying, look, guys, you want to be disciples? You want to walk the way I walk? You can't do it. You can't split hairs. You can't be critical. You can't be judgmental. You can't. You can't be so certain about everything. It's so comfortable to be certain about everything. We call those people bigots. You see, you can go places in the country and they're certain about everything, and they are the most boring people to talk to because you don't really have a conversation, unless, of course, you agree with them. Then they'll talk to you all day long about how brilliant their observations are. Okay? Not just the way it is. He says, of course, so long, of course, as they continue, he said, these things don't please God. It makes him laugh at their folly. So long, of course, as they continue to observe his commandments. He says they're Jews. As long as they do the basics, all the rest of this stuff, what a joke. Right? I don't know what possibly God could think about all the developed creeds and systems and all the stuff we make people go through. You know, God says, basically God's a real bottom line kind of guy. And Jesus even simplifies it more and says, love yourself, love your neighbor, love God. Now I put it that way because I think that's the way. I think you have to love yourself, and then if you love people that don't love themselves, don't love others. If you love others, you begin to discover God in the relationship. It's the only place God. Everything is in relationship. Everything. You go to the simplest level, and how things are in orbit around each other at an atomic level. Everything is in relationship to everything. You look at the universe, and it's a dance between velocity and mass and gravity. And now other things we haven't discovered yet, black matter. Okay, and it's a dance of what? Of particles and they're all and they just and it's designed in such a way that they mostly keep their balance, but every now and then something runs into something else because it's not a perfect thing. And so a little bit of chaos is in the system. Well, okay, you have teenagers, you know that's true.
It's all relative.
It's all relative, and it's beyond relative because it's into quantum. So, not that I know anything about that stuff. I only know what I read, okay? And I only believe less than half of that. He says, but they don't do that. Now, Jesus said what commands they really needed to pay attention to. Show mercy, walk humbly. He said, you guys always focus on the wrong stuff. I'll tell you what they always focused on. They always focused on the money stuff. That's the bottom line there. But they don't do that. They cover up their transgressions well. But everything they have now completely hidden will soon be revealed. Let me ask you a question. Is Jesus talking to you at this moment? Is he talking about you and is he talking about your life? No. But is there a principle here that you could learn something? Yes. But he's saying, look, this system that these guys have designed, it's getting ready to fall apart. Did it fall apart? Yes, it did. We know history, don't we? It really fell apart. Okay. He says, will soon be revealed, in fact, their real behavior. See, these guys are not being real. See, the question is, who's the real you? See, who's the real you? I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, there's nothing better than being in relationships with people where I can be the real me. Not that I often practice not being me, because it's just so much fun being me. That, that really there's no, I'm at to the point now in my life, if I have to pretend to be your friend later, right, peace out, as they say. I just don't have time, you know what I mean? And if I have to explain myself too much because you can't wrap your mind around openness, I might explain myself a few times, but beyond that, it's very tiring. Right? It's very tiring. It's like being with someone and they're constantly saying, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? What are you thinking?
Oh my God.
I have a nephew and he hates that because he's a rather introspective young man, Garrett. And Garrett is a very introspective young man. And I understand this because I was very introspective when I was young before I found my gregarious side and so people always ask him, is everything okay? And he gets tired of being asked, is everything okay? And what are you thinking about? And it's like, A, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm 17. It's a vacuous mass, right? There isn't a whole lot going on there, right? I'm not thinking, I think, therefore I am. I'm not like parsing these deep philosophical metaphysical ideas. I'm just like, there ain't nothing going on. Now, I don't think that for a girl, but a guy, you can think that for guys, because when guys say they're not thinking about nothing, that's true. It's actually possible. We do it regularly. It's possible. He says, the hidden will soon be revealed, okay? In fact, their real behavior and even their secret thoughts will all be brought to light. And I'm talking about sometime out there. He's talking about what you think eventually affects the quality of your life, the decisions you make, and the outcomes. So you think God's in charge of all outcomes? God just sit there, just wound it all up. You don't really make any choices. Please. We don't believe in that God anymore. All right. Well, God just planned everything and you just think you planned things. Oh, come on. Why bother? Is that really the end game, is robots? Really? No, I don't think so. Are you saying, Pastor, that God doesn't know everything? I'm saying God can know everything that's possible to know, but not everything can be known. The future is open. Right? You study the universe. Is it open or closed? When you look at what God created, open or closed? Or even when you think about the evolutionary process or just the seasons, open or closed? Right? The summer say fall? Hell no. Hell no. There's no fall this year. Summer all the time. It's fixed, baby. No, there's a little struggle. Oh, there always is. But summer finally says, all right already. And the leaves say, about time. Right? And they fall. And then it gets cold. And that's just the way it is. It's an open system, people. And so God designed an open system, and God is not a control freak. It's like, that's why you pray. You pray because you could possibly involve God in a way, in a circumstance that would have a different result. But God doesn't pray for selfish. God is not involved in selfish junk. So, as James says, the reason why you don't get answers is because your head's up your butt. No, he doesn't exactly say it that way, but close. Your head's up your butt. You're thinking about the wrong thing. Me, 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 me. Why doesn't God give me more of me? That's not how it works. No, he wants you to be more of you, but in an ever so deeper and more profound way than just praying for a new car or a this or a that or for someone to get theirs. Right. Come on. Elevate your prayers. Right. So Jesus is talking to disciples here. He's saying that method, the methodology these guys use, eventually he's saying it produces junk, and I'll prove it. He says, what they have whispered about their behavior in the darkness will soon be fully illuminated. Makes me think about Washington right now. And what you have little more than breathed in the ear of a trusted fellow worker in the storeroom will now be shouted from the housetops. In other words, most people know. You know what? Most people know, but they just don't say. You know, and it's terrible when everybody thinks you're full of crap, but they just don't say because they're your friends. You wish someone would say, please tell me.
Those are your friends.
Those are your friends, you know. Someone comes like, that's up your butt. My friends, how can you be frightened of slimy people like them? So he's talking to the apostles. The moment is going to come. These people have power. Who has power? The slimy people. They got power because it's all about control and power, manipulation, fear. So he's going to juxtapose their God and the real God. So he's going to show where their view of God ends up. Now, he's not being literal here. He's teaching a metaphor, a story of deeper spiritual truths. But if you're not ready for them, you won't see them. If you're worrying about, what exactly is this and that, and, how many angels fit on the head of a pin. You have to be very open when you read Scripture so that, as the Scriptures teach, the Spirit can teach you. Because this could mean, literally, this could mean something different for each one of you in this moment. Doesn't have to, it's not one size fits all. That's the uber control God. That doesn't, that really you have to make excuses for, because people say, well, if God's in control and he can do everything, why did that happen? And then you got to explain the uber control God that you have, because it doesn't make sense. Why children suffer, why bad things happen to good people. These things don't make sense. And so then you have to spend forever developing these complex theories to try to explain why God is the way he is. And anyways, the way your experience tells you God is not that way, but yet you resist against your own knowledge. Now, these men had a reason to resist their own knowledge. Why? Profit. Profitable system. Profitable religious system. Things are going good. Mega this, mega that. Mega building. Mega church. Mega, right? They have a reason to solidify the system and to make it fixed. And to become the gatekeepers. Beware of gatekeepers. Now, you need gatekeepers, but when you're talking about between you and God, beware of the gatekeepers. Beware of the people who want to manipulate the gate, right? Why? Because they want the gate. Aha, it's funny when you can use the English word to mean two different things. The gate, meaning the money you collect at the gate to get in the gate, right? It's called the gate. Okay, everybody there? All right, very good. All right, I have to explain it myself. Okay. He says, yes, they can kill your body. These guys got power. They can kill you. Yes, these kind of people, they could ruin your reputation. Yes, they could talk about you. Yes, they can do all these things. But what else can they do? But here's he's saying, they can't eat you. You know what I mean? And I'm more than one setting anyways. You'd have to save some of me for later, because that would, that's at least a couple of weeks worth of food, at least, for a fairly large family. The Gillums would eat me in a couple days. But what else can they do? Isn't it far more important to be afraid of the person who can throw you into hell? Yes, be afraid of him. Whoa, Pastor, Jesus is teaching on hell here. Really? He's teaching on hell? Is that what we're discussing? First, what's the word here? The word here is Gehenna, which is the valley of Gehenna, which is where you throw the trash when stuff isn't valuable anymore. Right? I go to the Anza dump regular. I do not pine over anything I throw in. I don't sit there and cry, oh my, it's done, it's over, it's finished. Its season is over. Its usefulness is complete. Now, in those days, they didn't have the elaborate methods that we do to try to control trash. So they burnt it. Ah, that's how fire got connected to the word. They burnt it. And not only that, they also threw criminals in there. You know, there wasn't a lot of Emily Post back then. Children were treated badly. Women, girls, you don't want to know. You don't want to know, okay? You had power, you were the man, everybody else wasn't. And trust me, only ones that had power for the most part were the men, right? And that's the system they built, and that's the religious system they built. So he says, look, worry about see, these men are creating a destiny. That destiny is going to end up, well, because God is involved in this process of relationship and destiny. But he's not dictating destiny. Oh, I'm just going to wait for God to show me my destiny. Don't waste your time. It isn't coming. But do this. Start moving in a direction and see what happens. Try a couple doors, for God's sake. All right? Start moving in a direction. What direction is that? What? You still don't listen? Listen to who? Pastor, tell me. I'm not telling you nothing because I don't want responsibility for your failure. Right? Give me a sign. Give me does that sound familiar? Give us a sign, Jesus. Tell us the magic, secret. All right. Only ignorant people want a sign. It's an adulterous generation wants miracles. You know, miracle guys can get away with anything. They're the biggest crooks. You know the one thing that actually separated Jesus from other miracle workers of his time? He didn't take money. There were other people doing miracles at the time of Christ. I don't want to mess you up, but there are other people that have done miracles besides Jesus, okay? But Jesus did an odd thing. He didn't take money. Now, when people went to the temple to get a healing or to get a prayer for healing, you know what they had to pay? Money. Okay? And when you're a slave, what's the odds that you're going to be able to get a bullock or a lamb spotless to be able to go to get a prayer, to get a healing? Slim and none, right? And the only people that went were the people that didn't need it so that they could be seen. Hoo, right? Show and go, right? So I've got my Sunday best on. Oh, Jesus, oh, Jesus, oh. All right, so Jesus is unique in his time. He doesn't take money for his miracles, which ticks off who? The people making money on miracles. The people, so he's a gatekeeper that doesn't keep the gate. He's the guy that slimes with everybody, and the slimy people who are making money off the pain and the anguish and the fear of people, which they continue to foster. So they continue to, right? Jesus says, in fact, those guys who foster fear, their whole system is going to end up in the dump. And eventually it will be useless. And what happened to that system? Again, history will tell you it died. We're not talking about some scary place where guys with pitchforks stick you all day long. Please. That's the church that got more like the Pharisees. See, and lost the message. Lost the message of Jesus. What? The interior message. Quietness. As a friend of mine posted it recently. I actually pay attention. Wow, it's amazing.
I liked it.
Yeah, it was cool. He says, so don't be afraid of the slimy people. that whole system, anyways, you know, God, they're not cooperating with God. It's a cooperation. It's a dance. They're not cooperating with God. How does Jesus? Because they don't know me. So God is doing something in this moment. There's a lack of cooperation. Therefore, it's not going to get the infusion of life it needs and the wisdom to start thinking differently about the present and the future. What wisdom does it need? That it needs to stop thinking warlike, that it's waiting for a Messiah who's going to kill the Romans. Mindset. What is the mindset? War. What you going to get? Live by the sword, die by the sword. So so since they have ears but cannot hear, and they have eyes but they cannot see, they're going to miss their opportunity to blend with what God is doing. So you're not getting new wisdom. You're going to fight for the old stuff that's dead. Might have been something back in the day, but it's just not working anymore. But you're just going to, I don't care. I'm just going to go down with the ship. That is not the nature of spirituality. Spirituality gravitates towards, then Jesus says, true spirituality, you know, it moves towards doing the good, the common good, towards relationships, towards love, towards mercy, towards kindness, towards the fruit of the Spirit. It continues to move in this direction. And if you don't change that, there's a different outcome. You think God is the God of one outcome. No, he's the God of multiple outcomes. No, God knew I was going to be stupid and do that thing. Well, he watched you do it and slapped him. I can't believe it. Because that little voice said, no, don't try to tell me it didn't. Unless you are so disconnected from your conscience that just don't hear the warnings anymore. You don't hear the robot. Warning, Will Robinson. Warning. Come on, you heard it. You heard it. Well, but do you have a Bible verse? Go away. How many people quoted that section? How many people to me have quoted that section to try to say that Jesus was saying here that there's a literal place called hell where people are tortured forever? It's not even talking about that. So Jesus goes on and he says, look, okay. The wrong way, the right way. The wrong way leads here to the dump, where everything eventually gets burnt and what? Destroyed. I've been to Israel. Is that dump still there? No. It's a great archaeological place, though. It's a great place to find about how people lived, because you can tell a lot about people by their trash, right? But that's another story. But Jesus is not talking about some Greek idea of some place called Hades, the place of the underworld of fallen wicked spirits. If he was, he'd use the word. He uses the word, which is for the local dump. I'm sorry if you didn't know that. I'm glad you're informed now. Jesus, isn't it possible to buy 5 sparrows for 2 pennies? But God doesn't forget. Now he's going to tell you what God is really like. Not the God of these guys. He's getting ready to tell you what God is really like, how important you really are, and where your focus should be. Don't worry about these guys. All they can do is threaten you. They do it all the time. Oh, Pastor Bill, you know, one brother here just passed away. He sent me a little warning. Oh, I fear for you. And oh, yeah, I bet you do. I bet you fear a lot. I was talking to a friend who's a chaplain. Interesting thing. Do you know who fears death the most? Fundamentalist people towards the end of their lives fear the unknown the most. Why? Because they've said the most unforgiving and they have the most fixed, absolutist, and in their death reflections, they realize, I've come up short. And they wonder if they've lived a life worthy of an afterlife. He said, you know the people who pass the easiest? People that aren't all caught up in that mumbo jumbo. right? And they feel okay. All right, I'm ready. You know. My dad was upset. He couldn't go faster. He was like, I want to go faster. What is this with my body? You want to live? You want to live? Come on already. You're not serving me anymore. I need to go. He says, but God doesn't forget even one of them. He knows their names and where they're born. And as for you, talking about disciples, people that are moved. Again, a couple weeks ago, we talked about disciples. These are spiritual teachings that move us into another realm, but it's not a realm of the world, but it's a realm that affects the world. In other words, when you learn to live this way, this balanced way, you begin to affect your world because you bring God in. Then when you pray because you know how to pray. And those prayers actually make a difference. Now, don't make a difference if you have a God who knows everything ahead of time and's already planned everything out. Then praying is silly. Then they have to say something like, prayer isn't about changing God, it's about changing you. You know, it's come up with those clever little sayings. Because like their God's like, I'm sorry. I wrote it way back before I did anything, and I'm just not really engaged. Worship me. Bow at my feet. Right. Okay. Forget about it. You know what I mean? How does that work if you want to raise children? Have you tried that method? It doesn't work. Then are you not the child of God? Right? So we have this interplay. So he says, look, here's the truth. God knows you intimately. Now, he knows the hairs on your head, which doesn't mean a fixed amount. It implies, amen, it doesn't mean a fixed amount. It implies this, constant involvement to the changing environment that you live in and constant availability to help you affect that as you connect with a God who is involved in the creation so that it is moving towards a united common good in the future, i.e. Colossians and some of the writings of Paul. God will be all in all. But it doesn't mean like how you make paint when you have a bunch of cans of paint but you don't have enough to make one can of paint, so you put all the paint together and it looks like crap, but it's paint. But hey, clue, don't mix oil-based and water-based paint. You should know that by now. It doesn't apply well. And talk to the painter, they'll tell you. They'll explain that to you. So it's not like that at all. What's it like? Every tribe, nation, language, culture, what is it? Diversity. How do we know that? Look at the universe. How do you know God's into uniqueness? I got to explain that to you. I got to explain that all the girls shouldn't be walking around in prairie dresses, right? I think they look good without prairie dresses, personally. It's possible. He says, look, he can tell you exactly how many hairs you have on your head at this very moment. Now, don't get all literal. This is an analogy, people. God is not spending God's time counting hairs. If you make this literal, you're going to miss the message. And this is the problem with Bible study. Is you're all studying around what someone told you it literally means, and it doesn't mean that. Right? When you study how Paul quotes the Old Testament, he always quotes it out of context. Why? Because he don't even think in those terms. He thinks, that works for me where I am now. He pulls it right out of its context, puts it right in his spiritual reality and says, that means this. Now, what we do is we say, oh, now it's fixed again. No, you need something, just go look and find something, and when it comes out, or what? You're going around, like Shirley said today, and all of a sudden songs come in her mind. Right? Or, I don't know, my dream yesterday where I was doing prophetic music, and I was singing in Hindi.
Nice.
And then it became a Bollywood production. And it was like nuts. And I was Bollywood, and I'm up on a stage, and it's Bollywood, and there's all this music going on, but it's all Indian music. And it was like, cool, I didn't want to wake up. I didn't know what it was about, but I felt great when I woke up. He says, look, don't be afraid. He says, walk with courage. He's with you. And to him, you are worth far more than 10,000 skies full of sparrows. Don't go this way. Don't go that way. It ends up in the dump. Walk this way. Talk this way. Right? That's what it's about. Jesus says, walk this way, man. Walk this way. When I say believe in me, I'm not talking about some set of doctrines. I'm saying, hey, man, believe what I'm telling you. I mean, pay attention. Hello. I'm not saying believe in a thing, a particular thing. I'm telling you the whole thing, all of it. It's all part of it, and it's so simple. He says, each person who speaks up and publicly declares that they are my disciples, so we're talking about disciples now. He's saying, look, okay, it's going to be scary. These people are, when something's dying, it isn't fun to watch. Right? Recovery sometimes is not fun to watch. God's recovering from violence himself. But violence doesn't work. Just read the Old Testament and you will see violence begets violence. Doesn't work. God says, God had one of his moments. He says, Moses, let's just kill them all. Yeah, hell, I can make a new batch. Moses says, God, bad PR, man. That's bad PR. God says, Moses, I think you might have a point there. Maybe it's time for a change. Let's work with what we got, right? And because why? Because now is God testing Moses? I don't know, people. But it seems, as you study Scripture, that God, and culminating in the incarnation, that it seems that God is weaning away from violence as a tool to accomplish things. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Any kind of violence, it doesn't work. It doesn't get you there. We have this new covenant. We have Christ, and it's just this radically new idea. And these guys are still committed to violence, to anger, to control, and to making money at the gate, to collecting the gate at the gate. We'll close here. He says, so every person that speaks up, my disciples, then I will boldly speak for them. In fact, I will declare to the Father himself and all the angels that you rest in my protection. Now, that doesn't mean bad stuff isn't going to happen to you. Don't think about that. You have to think about protection in terms of protecting what's really important, which is you, which Jesus already said wasn't this. He just said this isn't you. We talked about that last week. He'll protect you. He says, even if you die, I'll protect you. Right. You die, but you don't die, you live. He says, on the other hand, everyone who disowns me in front of witnesses, I myself will disown before witnesses, namely Father, God, and his angels. He says, you're either going to work with this system or not work with it. Right? If you don't work with it, it's okay. You get the consequences. What's the consequences? It doesn't work. And I think there's hope for people that are failures, don't you? Weren't you a legalist at one time? Huh? Haven't you changed? Haven't you evolved? Right? Okay. Now maybe you crashed and burned, or the system didn't work for you. It's okay. Don't turn around and judge those that you were at one time. That's a waste of time. He says, incidentally, anyone who says anything against me will be forgiven. And we'll end there. Jesus, we'll pick up again next week. Jesus goes on and says, here's what it's like. Just look at something growing. Now, you know how long it takes to watch something grow. Look at the fields. Look at the flowers. Look at this. Look at that. He says he's trying to get you to stop. And because this is the first stage in knowing who you are is reflection. trusting who God says you are, something highly valued. Disconnecting yourself from thoughts that say something other than that. Right? Reconnecting yourself with other people who are also trying to think differently. Right? And then you pause, then reflection. Then you realize the kingdom of God is within you, but not for your own consumption. You realize then that this thing is a dance. You start moving into the ideas that you're praying for people. Don't tell them. The best kind of prayers are prayers that really matter in moving a person towards who they really are. And you do guerrilla prayers, secret prayers. Jesus says secret prayers, guerrilla prayers. Prayers do change the future if you are seeing yourself and the future as it potentially could be. Not as something fixed that you have to get to. God's perfect future. There is no such place. It's potential. God with you is potentiality. And you won't always hit it doesn't matter, people. It just matters that you're moving forward in love. Right? In love and in compassion and in kindness and in goodness. All the things that Jesus taught are really important. Now pray in that way. And now that kind of prayer makes a difference, changes outcomes. Because you are made in the image of God and you were designed to change outcomes. You were designed to work in concert with God to change outcomes. The future is not fixed. It's open. Open and waiting. Waiting for what? For you to join the dance, okay? Like I said last week, the creation's waiting. Waiting for what? The manifestation of the sons and daughters of God. All right. So anyway, let's do some music. And we'll pick up again next week in Luke, unless I change my mind. Why do I change my mind? I have no idea. I'm a butterfly.
No.
A bee, more like a wasp.
Hornet.
I'm a hornet. All right.
Dude, I answered my macaroni question.
What was that?
My buddy came by yesterday, he says, I'm gonna make you some macaroni. I said, you have got to hear this. First thing I had my thought before I woke up and was in dream and awake state, some macaroni. And he's making me some macaroni. And I didn't even tell him the story. He just came up and said, dude, I'm gonna make you some macaroni. I was like, no way.
That's how God plays with your mind. You
It's
know
all
what I
good.
mean?
I was a nervous wreck until I got
It's
there.
all the subtle things, people. It's all subtle. It's not big stuff. Don't look for miracles.
No,
Life is the only miracle you're
I'm
going to
looking
get.
for some macaroni.
Take a deep breath.
Sweet.
All right.
Your
I don't think you can record the music.
Say that again?
Your love never fails.
Your love never fails.
Are you done?
I'm done, but there's still
It
recording.
says second from the last page. There's no numbers, it's all
That's
alphabetical.
all right.
It's on the bottom.
Oh, it's on the bottom?
Yes, please. That's so we can add and change and delete and correct stuff.
So if you're able to actually find a song, thank a teacher.
Thank you, teacher. Yeah.
Sweet.